I didn't realize what it took back then to set a goal and to crush it. I didn't know what it took back then. Now I'm almost a bit fearful when I set goals because I don't stop until I get them.
But any chance I can get to be around him, I'm going to, because I'm just grateful God put him in my life.
That guy shows up from the minute he wakes up to the minute he goes to sleep.
His positivity, it really rubs off on people, and it brings them into a new light and a new air of there are possibilities.
He will change your perspective on life.
Being around him makes everybody better, and for some reason he's got a way of doing that.
He thrives in seeing other people succeed.
You get this confidence from him that brings you confidence as well.
I've watched him transform over the years, and now he's transforming other people's lives.
I consider him to be one of the most genuine people I've ever met.
He's not just a workaholic. You know, he really takes time for me and for the boys and for his parents and for his own physical health.
My mission in life is to be the ultimate warrior for God and my family, and to end human suffering one person at a time.
You want to do the intro?
I'm good this time, dude. I mean,
Way to man up.
yeah, I'm all right this time.
Sometimes I actually don't like doing intros. I just go right into it.
Yeah, dude, nothing wrong getting right to the nitty gritty.
Yeah. I think we should go around the room and just be like, what are you grateful for? Josh, you want to start us off?
Of course I do. What am I grateful for? Today I'm grateful for waking up and having another opportunity to just enjoy this thing we call life.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You don't got nothing?
Today I'm grateful for being able to go for a run. You know, I had a solid run today.
Yeah.
I felt pretty good, and yeah, gonna go train, do some legs. Grateful for that too.
For
Won't
sure.
be after, but
I'm grateful for this, man. You know, obviously I don't get to come home a lot and see you guys as much anymore, but anytime we do get together, it's always the best time. So this is it for me right here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for all three of you guys. I mean, you guys definitely have all been an inspiration in my life. So every single one of you guys are brothers to me. So extremely grateful for that.
That's awesome.
I thought you were gonna get a little tear here.
Emotional. I have like a new game. It's called How Deep Can You Go? So it's like we just pull a card and you have to answer the question. Want to go first?
Yeah, dude, let me go first. No, I want to. Wait, does that have to be a top one, or don't matter?
Don't
He's
matter.
already
He's setting them up.
He's rigged the deck.
He's setting them up.
All right. Oh, this is only level 1. I feel like it might not be that good. All right. What is the first thing you think people notice about you? Oh, that's a good one, dude. I never thought about that before. The first thing I think people notice about me. Honestly, dude, I mean, this might not be like the answer they're looking for, but I feel like if I'm in a good mood, I feel like it's my smile. I feel like I radiate. You know what I mean? Sometimes.
Give a smile to the camera.
Nah, dude. It's not a good mood. Like this isn't the first time we met. You know what I mean? It's just.
I'll pull
There
it
it
up.
is. It's coming
I have
out.
so much
Yeah,
footage of you. I'll just pull it up.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But yeah, I don't know.
Especially the creepy smile.
The creepy smile.
Yeah, like you have like a creepy
The
smile.
upper lip rolled up. Yeah, there you go.
That one.
like the Conor McGregor smile.
Dude. Yeah. When he just like looks, he's like.
That's the thumbnail right there.
Yeah. Just,
Yeah, for sure. When did you cry the hardest? Oh, this is deep. I mean, yeah, probably when my dad died. That was a quick one.
Yeah, understandable.
All right. Let's start with level 1. What's something your parents warned you about that ended up true?
Oh.
Good question. They warned me about a lot of things.
Me too.
It wasn't a warning. It was more of a guidance. And it was that God was the answer. When I was growing up, I went to church and kind of forced to go to church and didn't really like it at all. And then at a certain point in my 20s, I was more atheist because I just pushed back against all of that stuff. Didn't really get much into it and just, yeah. And then my mother, funny enough, and goodness of her heart, if I would say something like universe, she'd say, "You mean God?" And I'd be like, "No, I said universe," right? But she just always like a little bit of salt here and there. And then coming back around to my 40s now, I'm coming full circle around, and now we have deep conversations about spirituality. And I'm even closer to God now than I've ever been in my life. But so it wasn't as much of a warning as it was a kind of guidance through. But I've been on all sides of that subject, and it's been quite a ride. That'd be my answer.
Yeah, I can relate to that heavily, because same thing with me. I grew up Catholic, going to church. I was confirmed Catholic from like 8th grade. But I just didn't like going to church. I was forced to go to church, but I liked the belief behind it. Yeah. And then I started not atheist, but I was just like, you know what, I'm not gonna do this anymore. I'm not gonna. And same thing, like right now I'm in my 20s, but I'm starting to get towards that whole spiritual aspect of it, and I'm starting to appreciate it more. So yeah, same thing. Like I totally went away from it, and then starting to go towards it for sure.
Then I'm gonna third this because I'm kind of for the past couple of years I'm kind of in like that limbo, because same thing, grew up Catholic, forced to go to church, and then I was like, you know what, I'm done, dude. When I was like 18, pretty much when I was on my own, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Probably because it was forced, you know what I mean? And being rebellious, I'm like, since you made me do it, I'm not doing it anymore, like that kind of thing. And now I'm like, obviously we've been doing the whole spiritual, I mean, I've gotten into the spiritual aspect since like, it's probably like my 4th year now, meditating, doing all that stuff, affirmations. But just, I'm still in that limbo of, not necessarily even with like God in the universe, but more so, what do I believe, But I feel like that changes, like experiences you go through, people you meet, the things you believe in start to change, Yeah. But not that it's necessarily a bad place to be, but just kind of, I'm still growing up, so to speak,
For sure. Yeah, I would say like I never didn't believe, but there was definitely a time, like early 20s, where I was like, I don't really know what to believe.
Yeah.
But the last couple of years, like just like surrounding myself with people who do believe has really catalyzed it big time. And like going to like those events, like you kind of almost let God speak through you. And like I see people like you, like yourself, like you just let God speak through you, and like I'm like, wow, this is real now.
That's crazy.
But
I kind of want to connect it too, like with your dad passing, and like what was your thought with belief
at that time? I'm not even sure. I mean, I think I believed in God, but I guess like, how could God let that happen, kind of thing,
I can see that.
But I think there's like definitely an afterlife. I kind of believe that heaven is a place on earth, and I think He's given me signs and stuff like that. So that's kind of helped me believe even more now.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. There's certain things in life that happen, and especially I found in like late 30s, early 40s, when you start getting kind of like midlife, and you're thinking, okay, what's this whole thing mean? What have I achieved? What does this whole thing called life mean? And then things start happening. You're either building businesses or families or whatever, and the next thing you know, you get to a position where things are happening and you just can't explain them. Everyone says, abundance of the universe and abundance of God and all these kinds of things, but when you finally tap into that stream, just by being grateful and just by being happy and just by seeing the best in things, and it starts to happen for you, none of it is logical, because you were doing the same thing before, but you just switched a mindset. Same approach, different mindset. And you get a completely different result. And you're like, wait a minute here, so if I'm just grateful all the time, life it's much simpler? Yeah. That's why the first thing when I wake up in the morning, I say, thank you, God, for one more day. I'm going to make you proud today.
Yeah.
right? That's the first thing I say every time my eyes they pop open. I breathe, I'm like, thank you for another one. I get another one, thank you. You start that way every single day, you really don't have bad days, right? The level of success is I woke up. Not that I have to have $1 million here or buy this car or that house. You just say, wow. And then all of a sudden everything else lights up and things happen. Like you're going to have clients that are going to be a pain in the neck. You're going to have things happen to you in life. But then when you start grateful, you're like, all right, well, what am I supposed to learn from this? This is a lesson. It's not a problem, it's a lesson. So what am I supposed to learn? God is handing me this to learn something.
So you count your blessings versus your downfalls. You don't even think, like, you just think about all the things that you have, not what you don't have.
When I was talking about like affirmations and stuff earlier, I have this really long, not even like a thread, but a really long just in my notes. I went through this phase probably like 2 years ago, and I just recently started picking up again. Every time I would wake up in the morning, I would type in my notes something I was grateful for.
Nice.
And it's crazy how the world would come full circle, because there's a lot of stuff, but it was literally just the simplest thing. The one day I woke up, I was like, I'm thankful I have working arms. And then I went to work later that day, and I literally, like, I was on a call and I met a dude who just had like one arm, and I was like, that's so weird, because literally just this morning I'm like, I'm just grateful for working arms, and just seeing this guy having one and the situation and stuff he was in, I was like, it was weird. You know, it was kind of like a whoa.
It was a sign, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, it's not for nothing, you know what I mean?
For sure.
But I bet you he's happy he has one working arm.
Exactly.
Think about it.
You know, yeah. Because, I mean, I hate saying it, but it's true. Someone always has it worse, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I see a lot of that in my job, unfortunately, every day, but it's just the little things like that.
I have a friend that years ago they were Christian, and then they both were atheists for the longest time. They just didn't believe in anything, right? And they started to go back into Christianity, probably in their 30s. You know, they had 2 kids and all that, and we were kind of like with them on that journey, from a distance, but still with them. And I'll never forget it, Brad's the guy's name. He said to me one time, he said, you know, Josh, I noticed something, that the most successful people that I surround myself with, they believe in God. I'm like, and I was at that point, you know, not really, I believed in a God, but not really any kind of organized theory around it.
Right.
But so we started talking a little bit more about that, and he's like, yeah, I see the most successful business people, they're Christians, they're people of faith. And I said, that's bullshit, right? There's no way that's the case, because I know it can be the opposite too. The crazy part is that as I started to progress on my journey, I noticed that as well. They got into the church heavily. They sold everything in America, and they went to China for 8 years and lived there as missionaries. They went from atheists to full-blown missionary Christians in some of the worst parts of the world, right? And it's like they're in India, they're in all these crazy places serving. It's like they were just pulled right into this thing, because once you get started with it, like you open up this whole world of possibility of helping and serving. And I see how successful they are now and what they do, and some of the most successful men and women that I know have a good, solid faith.
Yeah.
Because there's certain things, especially as you grow, guys, and you get older in life and all this, that there's certain things that you just have to rely on faith for. There's no logical sense to any of it. When you think about it, it's like, how is this all happening right now? And just thank you. And that's it's crazy.
That's so funny you say it, because I had one of those moments about a month ago now.
Yeah.
I told you guys a little bit about it, but I didn't ever tell the full-blown story, and I'm not going to tell it right now because it takes a lot of time. But long story short, we had a shooting at work, and we chased this dude all the way up into another county, and I'm sitting there at 2 a.m. in the woods. It's dark, I'm by myself. I have my gun out, just not knowing if this dude has, you know, his gun zeroed in on me, but I'm ready. And I was just kind of like, everything that happened, it was just kind of like, I don't know what's coming, I don't know what's next, but everything up to this point, you know, I was okay, everyone else was okay, and it was just kind of one of those things. I had to rely on faith, and I was just like, you know what, I was like, I'm alive, thank you. And then the night just took care of itself, you know what I mean? But it was one of those things, man. That was one of the first thoughts as I'm sitting there, you know, 2, 3 in the morning. I'm with a fucking hand, like my gun of all things out. I'm like, yo, thanks. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, thanks, man, but shit. It was it was a crazy couple of days that kind of just made me. It was, you couldn't have said it better. It made me just, I didn't have anyone except my faith.
Yeah.
Because I mean, nothing on this earth is gonna stop a bullet if it's coming for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, man. We're just gonna sit here, hope for the best, and
Right.
and, you know, we're still here, so we're doing all right. You know.
What do you think the intuition is? Like that inner voice, that pulling thing. You think it's intuition? You think it's your heart, or do you think it's God?
Inner voice in what way? What do you mean?
Your intuition.
Like
that-
knowing?
Yeah, it's like not really like your mind tells you, but like you just feel some type of way, and
Like
you
your
kinda
gut feeling?
Yeah, gut feeling, inner
Yeah,
voice,
yeah.
intuition, whatever you want to call it. I feel like that's God.
It is. I believe it's his guidance.
Yeah.
And we just have to tap into it. Just try to get out of here and get into here.
Right.
Because when we're in here, everything makes sense. So when we're up here trying to figure it out and be so logical about everything that it doesn't, all the math doesn't compute. But when you're feeling it moving forward, it's a beautiful thing. It's just a beautiful flow state just to be in.
What are some ways you've done that? You've gotten out of here and gotten into here.
Doing things that are really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Proving it to yourself over and over, because your mind is never going to be your friend. It's always going to make you smaller, lesser, worthless. It's its job. It's to keep you safe and small.
Right.
And everything we want is bigger than that. So it's constantly proving to ourselves that we'll do the stuff that our brain is telling us is insane. You know, cold water immersion and running long distances and just doing crazy things, hiking crazy places. And you keep proving yourself over and over again that you're going to do that. And I believe that it kind of puts a check on what's going on in your mind, and you can start leading more with your heart. Because once you're down there, you know, in your heart moving forward, time stops. And you just, you know how it is. You guys have probably done something in your life where you're just doing it and you're like, oh my God, it's already 5 o'clock? Or it's 2 o'clock in the morning, like where did the time go? Like, that's flow state. My goal was, how do I get in flow state as often as I possibly can, because that's where I'm happiest, right? And that's where I can serve at the highest level. So it is a muscle, it's built. You learn that as you go forward. But I've given all that, so I've surrendered all that to God. That it's just that intuition, it's his guidance. You know, how can I, that's one of the things that I ask each day, how can I receive more love and guidance each day? You know, and just surrender to what it is.
Right.
And not try to figure it out, just accept it as it is, you know? And
Definitely.
that's another thing, is death is a big piece, right? There's something, as a child, I was always scared of dying and all this kind of thing, and, you know, scared of making bad decisions that could potentially impact, I know, not dumb stuff.
Yep.
But there was always this deeper fear of being alone or dead. And after I started dealing with those things, started to unpack those things, and I said, you know what? And Ace, actually, he said, you know, we were having a conversation about this, and he says, you know, I'm preparing here on earth to be the warrior that God needs me to be in the next life, in the next level. I'm preparing now, so I want to go there wide open, ready.
Yep.
And then I add to that, I said, because when he wants you and your ticket's up, he's going to pull you. He needs you. Until then, we're here training. I'm like, man, you think about a mission, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Right? Think about it.
Kind of scary.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy. And it's like when he pulls a ticket, you don't have a choice. Let's go. Now, you can obviously impact that by doing really stupid things or not taking care of yourself.
Right.
But I believe when the ticket's pulled, I'm ready, sir. Let's go.
You think there's hell?
I do believe so, yeah. I believe that there has to be a balance, right?
Yeah.
There has to be a balance of both. It can't all just be positive. There has to be the contrast in order to keep one making sense.
Yeah, in order
Absolutely.
for there to be good, there must be evil. Or like good wouldn't exist.
It's the yin and the yang.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, dude. That I heard. I revisited one of Eben Britton's podcasts back when he was on hotboxing,
Yeah.
and he said similar to this realm about like when you die and stuff, and he was like, when you're truly living, he's like, you don't care when you go. And he was just kind of like, he was telling his story how he just kind of let go, like surrendered it all.
Yeah.
And he's like, he just woke up one day, he's like, you know, he's like, fuck it. He's like, maybe today's the day.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what I mean?
It's that faith.
Yeah.
Back
And
to
it's just,
faith.
but that's the thing, a part of kind of just like hands off, like, hey, because it's not your choice, you know? You're going when you're going.
Well, as humans, we want certainty. That's one of our top needs. Over 6 human needs is certainty. So we want everything to be certain. Do a certain thing. Show up at a certain time. Do it a certain way. Everything is so certain. That's all up here. The problem is life is everything but certain.
Yeah.
And most of the suffering that anybody will manage in their life is mostly because they focus on self. They focus on themselves, like I don't have enough, or I'm not enough, or whatever it might be, right? So with that being the case, if we spin that around and say, look, we don't necessarily need to focus on self as much if you surrender. If you are a believer and you surrender to God and you say, hey, I'm here. Use me. That's what I'm here for. Use me. I don't care about the control part of things. I've got to do certain things. Just I'm going to look for your guidance. I'm going to look for your grace. And I'm going to move through. And when you're ready, I'm ready. Right? And I'll never forget when we came off the mountain in Colorado. We were coming down from Grays and Torreys. And I was with Jesse coming through, and it was lightning was bouncing off the off the mountains. There's nothing. You're the tallest point.
Yeah.
It's raining, hailing, sleeting. It's all that stuff, just downpouring. And I'm walking along there feeling completely exposed and vulnerable because, I mean, lightning, you don't know where else going to come from.
Especially when you're 14,000 foot up.
Yeah, exactly. And you're moving down through. You're not quite thinking straight to begin with, but I'm moving down through, and I've never felt more free in my life.
Yeah.
Because as I'm walking through, I'm having that's why I love being out in the middle of nature like that. I'm having a conversation with God, just saying, like, this is just so gorgeous. And it scares you because you know that the elements could take you down in a second. One stupid move and you go off an edge, or you twist an ankle or break something, and how are you going to get off the hill? Yeah. So it's and then the lightning bolts and all that stuff coming down, and I'm just like, God, you're funny. You're testing me right now, aren't you? And I was like, if you want me, take me. If not, I'm going to just continue on my path. Just surrender. I'm like, I don't have control over that piece.
Right.
I just don't have control over it. I don't want control over it. It's time to just be. And there's something so freeing about that surrendering, to not thinking like I can control that. If I just eat all this, or I just do all this exercise, and I can control how long I live. Maybe. I guess we won't know for a while, huh?
Yeah.
Hopefully,
yeah,
right? But again, I said before, it's a matter of knowing that you do have an impact on that. If you eat McDonald's every day and sit on your ass watching TV, you're probably going to lead a more horrible life than if somebody that's actually moving around that's full of life and vitality. But at the same time, we don't know when that card's going to be pulled. And those times are the times for me that really strengthen my faith, because I feel like I'm with him out there.
Yeah, I feel that.
Well, speaking of cards being pulled, you still got a card.
Oh, yes.
What is your favorite compliment someone has given you? Favorite compliment?
First thing that comes to mind.
I would say a hard worker. That would probably be like one of the ones that I personally, because I try and be a hard worker every single day.
Who gave it to you?
Patience. Honestly, patience, and my supervisors. I've had friends tell me. I've had acquaintances, just people surrounding me.
Yeah.
And whenever someone says that, I'm like, or discipline's another one. Like me telling people with, doing marathons, ultra marathons, Ironmans, they're like, well, you must be disciplined. I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, okay, you're a hard worker. I'm like, well, thank you. Like I like that, because that's what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to be a hard worker, trying to be disciplined.
I would also say you're extremely giving. Like you don't have any problem giving at all. Like when we come over here, like you're always giving food. You're a value to people, like teaching people. Like you love teaching people new things. So I would say giving for sure. That would probably be my compliment to you.
Yeah. I definitely like to give, especially in my line of work. I mean, that's all I do.
Yeah, true.
That's all I do is give.
Yep.
And it's definitely very rewarding, but it's what I want to do. It's what I like to do. It's what gives me happiness. Is giving to other people. Yeah.
Love that. Cool. I think we're warmed up now.
I pulled another one, dude. I just want to.
Oh, you pulled another one.
I just want.
This is gonna be a card podcast. I like it. This is fun.
Yeah, last one was level 1. This is level 3, dude.
Let's do it.
This one might be a little harder. What question have you always asked yourself since you were a kid? That's easy, because I still ask myself every day, what's this all for? Because there's a lot of times I'm very confused when things happen, certain tragedies or really good things, and I'm like, well, then what's this all for? You know what I mean? Like,
have you ever answered that question?
I I feel like I have the answer, but the answer always keeps changing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's one of those things. Like when a good example was like with my job. I went to court with this. I've told you guys this story. I went to court. I locked up this dude who beat his girlfriend really bad, knocked her teeth out and stuff. He was only in jail for 6 weeks, and they threw out his case. And I was there in court, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just like literally, it was one of those times. I'm like, give me strength, because I'm like, what am I doing this for then?
Yeah.
Like, I'm here for people to, you know, your actions have consequences, good or bad.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
you can just do that.
Yeah, you've said that to me and Zach all the time. Like, why am I doing this shit?
It's super frustrating at times. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it makes my head hurt. But I'm like, but I can't control that. I can only show up and do my best every day, which I still do.
Yeah.
But sometimes it really makes you question, dude. I'm like,
yeah, where are you with that
fucking ticks me
situation
off.
as far as, you know, being an officer? And I know you're kind of in between things right now, thinking about doing something else.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. I'm making progress. You know, it's kind of my situation. I'm kind of just like, it's like a rinse and repeat of my actions every day. But I feel myself getting a little closer every day.
Yeah.
You know, like, because when I first had the question, I was like all the way back here, and now I'm like a little more towards the middle.
Yeah.
And each day I'm getting there.
Yeah.
But I just go into work. You know, I'm not attached to my job. I'm really not. I could quit.
Yeah, one day you're gonna like see over that hill and be like, oh, there's the answer.
And that's the thing. I'm just like, I'm like I'm not attached to it. I enjoy it sometimes, and there's other times I'd rather watch paint dry. But I mean, I'm just like, you know what? I'm not attached to it, and it was one of those things. So I'm just like, maybe today's the day. I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
But each day, same thing. Dude, I wake up, I go through my routine. You know, stretch, lift, whatever, run, and then I literally come home, and I will meditate on that question. And I just,
interesting.
It's been a lot of just emptiness. Looking for the answer, and it's just not there. I'm like, all right, well, we'll just try again tomorrow.
Maybe you have to stop looking for it.
Maybe, you know.
Yeah.
It's just kind of. I'm not even looking for an answer. I'm just looking for a push in which direction I'm supposed to go. Yeah, and it's the push just isn't coming yet. But I know it's coming because I can feel it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it's one of those things like each side has my arm and they're both pulling for me right now.
Yeah.
But someone's letting go one of these days.
Definitely.
And I'm gonna be like, yep, I'm going here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm okay with whatever happens because, you know, we still got plans. We still got things to do.
For sure.
Know?
I think it's so interesting that you have the perspective and the awareness, is what that's called, is your primary question. We all have primary questions.
Yeah.
Most of them are subconscious. And each day we ask the questions and we see our world within those confines of those questions. We actually do an exercise at Date with Destiny with Tony Robbins where we find our primary question and then we look at it and we see how it's serving us. Because some are empowering and some are disempowering, right? So when you find that, then what he does through a process is you actually create a new primary question. So for me, I went through this whole process and I couldn't figure out what my primary question was because I have a lot of questions. Some of them are statements, right? And I couldn't figure out what my primary question was. And I tried some on for size and they just didn't seem to fit. And then as soon as the exercise was over and the lights came on and I just looked around and I looked over and this guy looked at me and I looked at him and my first question was, I wonder what he thinks of me. Like being judged. And I'm like, is that my primary question? Is that the first question that goes through my head when I first meet people or am in an environment? I was like, that shocked me. I'm like, really? Seems kind of egotistical. Why would he even notice me? You know what I mean? But it's like, is that a primary question? So what Tony does is you go through this process of then saying, if that is, and I'm not even sure that is the one, but it's one of them, then he says, okay, we'll come up with a new primary question. So I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier. And the two don't have to even correlate. So when, instead of that being my question, I consciously think through it and say, okay, my new primary question is, how can I experience more of God's love and guidance now? That's the question that I'm purposefully putting into myself. So you have, just like you have that primary question, it's not because you are you have to solve that problem.
Right.
You could bench that or even keep that in the back of your mind, but ask yourself, what could be a more empowering primary question with an automatic built-in accelerator into it? Like when I say it, How can I experience more of God's love and guidance now? There's already the anticipation that it's happening. How can I experience more of it?
Right.
You can't lose. Or with yours, you may or may not get much from it. You may never solve that problem. Will that drive you crazy or not?
Yeah.
You know, so thinking through and say, okay, well, if that's the question you think it is, and I guess in the back of my head, I've been mindful of it now, but thinking about the judgment side of things, what other question could you put into position of that? So when you feel that, you say, well, wait a minute here. Nope, it's going to be this. And then see the world through that filter. Does that sound crazy?
No, not at all. It actually makes more sense.
You get to wire. You are the electrician of your life. You get to wire how these switches work.
Exactly.
This isn't something that happened to you.
Right.
This is something that has been a pattern, like a record, and just keeps spinning. And until you're aware of it, which you are, until you're aware of it and you say, oh, I got that. Put that record back on the shelf. We're going to pull a new one out and put it on, and then put the arm down and start listening to what kind of tunes are on there. You have the choice in how you select that. It's not something happening to you. You're allowing that pattern to keep moving.
Right.
That's the cool part about being alive, is we can do those things. We're the electricians of our lives.
It's very empowering.
For sure.
Yeah. No, that's something I've been very aware of too for a long time, is like, yeah, everything happens for a reason and whatnot, but it's like you still, like, this is your life. You have control over, you know, the things you do, your actions, whatever, your mindset, the way you talk, all the way down to what the freak you wear in the morning.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other day with, like, you're like, yeah, I was kind of like, let it come when it comes. And I was kind of like, yeah, but some things you have to, like, just, like, make happen. And I kind of find myself that, like, that's a hard question to ask, like, in between that, like, let it come, let it flow to me, or just make it happen. You know what I mean? Have you struggled with that too?
I feel like whenever I have a decision to make,
yeah,
that will be, like, whenever, because whatever I do, whether I stay or leave, I'm going to make it happen, right? Yeah. But I feel like I'm not going to, I personally just feel like, and like I'm 100% behind it, I just truly feel like it's not going to happen until something just clicks one day. Because I'm still filled with a ton of uncertainty.
For sure.
And even when I do have my answer, quote unquote, sure, there's still going to be uncertainty. There's uncertainty everywhere.
For sure.
But I think that's also what makes it exciting, you know? I mean, I love the uncertainty. That's why I do these crazy freaking physical challenge. Like, maybe I roll my ankle at mile 2. I don't know. Like I love that. But it's like, you know what I mean? And it's just like, and that's a big part of why I was really attracted to being a police officer. Just every day is something
you never
different.
know what's gonna happen.
Yeah. But now it's just, you know, the job's just not what I thought it was. Because I feel like I was stuck on how it was like 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. But now that I actually lived it, I'm just like, you know what, man? Like, this is where I'm supposed to be now, but I just know in my heart of hearts I'm not supposed to be here forever. Yeah. And I'm just kind of on my way to the next thing. For sure. But I'm not in a rush to get there. Yeah. You know what I mean? Maybe it comes tomorrow. Maybe it comes into 5 years. I don't know. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I'm ready for whenever it does.
It sounds like you're open to it.
Definitely.
Open to whatever, and everything you're doing now is preparing you for that next level.
For sure. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe that.
Yeah. Absolutely. You need to become the man that can handle the next level, and that's the preparation phase you're in right now.
I'm going to prepare as long as I have to, you know?
It'll make sense sometime.
That's a good one, dude. All that from that question.
I know.
It's pretty crazy.
Good one.
The game's called How Deep Can You Go?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw it on like TikTok. Like some people were playing with it, making videos on it, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta get that."
Yeah, that's a great idea, dude.
Man. Need it.
It is. This could be its own little podcast in itself.
It could be. Yeah, 100%.
Just get up, answer questions, man.
But yeah, we're 34 minutes in. We haven't even introed Josh yet.
Yeah, everyone's like, "Who's this guy?"
You found him on the street. He's walking. We look hungry.
No introduction needed.
But yeah, anyway, we got Joshua Gillow on the show. I met Josh probably 5 years ago at the Ninja Gym. We became really good friends. We've went around the world with each other, hiking mountains. He's a big mentor of mine, and now he's my business partner in the brand new video business. And yeah, I mean, he's really incredible, really inspiring. He's changed people's lives. He has a hell of a purpose. Like, what is your purpose actually?
So my purpose is to be the ultimate warrior for God and my family, and to end human suffering one soul at a time.
Yeah, and I've literally seen you do that at like these events and when you're speaking and just helping people one-on-one, and it's really been an honor, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Likewise.
And he was our second podcast, bro.
Yeah, he was actually on the podcast.
I remember that. Yeah,
second one ever.
Yeah, it was crazy. It's not on Spotify, so this will be the first one on Spotify.
Nice.
We'll have another video too. But yeah, let's dive in.
Again.
Yeah. Are we pulling cards this time, or do you have questions?
I don't necessarily have questions, but yeah, let's dive into your story a little bit. Okay. I want to know, what were you like when you were 24 years old?
24 years old. I'm trying to put myself in that position. So, at age 18, started my first business. Mm-hmm. At that point, I was also going to Lincoln Tech, which is a technical college out in Allentown, for architectural mechanical drafting. Also worked at a restaurant. I was bussing tables, valeting cars, washing dishes. I had a bunch of things going on at that time. And then moving into my 20s, just building a business at that point. I had Timrock Landscaping. We were just doing landscaping and growing that business and running, teams and all of that stuff, and learning a hell of a lot along the way, because I didn't have any business, education. Here's your EIN, pay taxes. That's all I got, right? And you had to figure it out on your own. It was a family business, so it made it very fun and tricky at the same time. So my brother took the lead out in the field. I ended up being more in the office and just trying to build a business, trying to figure this out. And at 24, I really wasn't on any kind of personal growth journey. I just wanted to not fail. Yeah. You know what I mean? I was just on this, how can we just keep this thing running, right? And so, because I didn't meet my wife until I was, I think, 25 or 26. Mm-hmm. And she's really the reason why I even started this growth journey, because she had been part of personal growth through her, her business, or what her passion is chiropractic, and they are very much focused on personal growth. And I'm a farm boy from Pennsylvania, mm-hmm. right? I'm just used to working with my hands. This is all brand new. And I meet this German girl, and she's starts telling me all this stuff. I remember going to one of her seminars, chiropractic seminar, and she's like, come along to this event, it'll be really fun. And they're like, they actually do this thing called a fire walk. And I'm like, why the hell would you walk on fire? I don't get that. I'm like, I might have been drunk around a campfire and tried to walk across it. But why would you put 20 foot of coals and walk across without burning your ass? How you do that? So I remember talking to my grandfather, he was alive at the time. I said, Pap, I met this girl and she's so cute and I love her. I said, but she just asked me to go to this event and they're going to walk on fire. He goes, you're out of your fucking mind, kid. I laughed, we laughed, and I left. That was a Friday. I left and we went to this event, and I remember there, again, being a farm boy from Pennsylvania as my identity at that time, going in there, and there's all these uber successful people surrounded by doctors and lawyers and all these people making hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year, and I'm like, I'm barely scratching, right? Just making ends meet here. I felt completely out of my realm in there. And then there's guys hugging each other. Not because they're gay, but just because they're like, hey, brother, they're brothers. I never experienced that in my life. I was like, this is really interesting. I remember the one guy came over and gave me a big hug, and it's his stubble on my face. I'm like, oh, damn, this is just weird. So I was like, all right, I just got to breathe through this. Anyway, we go out into the parking lot, and there's all the fire department around the outside, and they're just shaking their head. And we're out there they have a big drum, and they're just banging the drum. It's not like UPW where they've got a lot of energy. Right. It's the energy is just the drum. You just hear this carnal drum banging, and you're just moving your chanting, and then all of a sudden you feel the time is right and you go. They don't teach you how to do it. There's no cool moss involved. It's just go. And I'm like, all right, let's do this, right? And went across, and I was like, holy moly, I survived that. That was great. And everyone else was moving through it too. There was kids going across. People would burn the hell out of themselves too, because it's not a joke. It's real. I didn't burn there, thank goodness. But after that, all the firefighters are just shaking their head like, these people are out of their mind. What's wrong with these people? Why are they walking on fire? We put fires out. Why are they walking on them? Anyway, but it was a very powerful event to kind of be pushed into this world of growth. And I'm like, what's the difference between me and them? When I hear their hours, my wife probably works 26 hours a week. And I'm like, I work 80 and I feel like it's not enough. I'm like, what have they figured out?
Right.
So this is about that 24, 26 time when I started asking bigger questions. Wait a minute here. These guys are making 20x what I'd ever dream of, working a lot less hours than me and seem a lot happier. What's going on here? So I'd go to more and more seminars with her, and instead of when they talked about chiropractic and they talked about this concept of the power that created the body heals the body, and this above, down, inside, out focus in life. And I just started switching the words around from, chiropractor to landscaper or to designer or whatever I was identifying at that time of, in my life. So by spinning that around, I realized it's all the same story with just different characters. Right? It's all the same, having, abundance of your heart and all that kind of stuff. I think I have an abundance mindset and thinking about, God's grace and the power and the fact that you're just a vessel in this body. You're the steward of it, but there's a soul, man, the physical, man, the spiritual, and like all these kinds of things. And they just put it on such a crazy level that I was totally enamored by the way they were talking and the different ideas. So I started reading and going to seminars. That's really what sparked my interest in all of this. Started reading and going to seminars and to events and all that, and thinking like, man, there's so much more out there. Why don't other people know this? I didn't even know this. I'm 20 some years old here and I'm barely figuring this out. So that was the start of the journey. It was about mid-20s when I started to ask the bigger questions. Mm-hmm. And then into the 30s and starting a family, we had kids by the time I was 30.
Right.
So that was a big change.
Yeah.
Because kids demand everything of you at the time you don't want to give it. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge switch.
For sure.
It was the most amazing thing yet, but it was one of the most difficult when it comes to switching up. Because like it or not, guys, we're awfully selfish. Mm-hmm. And when we have to then provide for someone else when we don't want to, consistently, so you got to dig deep for that stuff, especially in the beginning.
Yeah, I've always thought being selfish, it's good, but people can view it bad, but like if you invest in yourself more, you're able to give more to other people.
Yes. Yep.
So it's like being selfish is really being selfless for other people. You take care of yourself so that you're good, and then you can focus more on other people.
So think about it this way. And I'm supporting what you're saying here. So if you don't take care of yourself, you become a burden to your family because you decided to take the easy route. Is that selfish or selfless?
Right. Yeah.
Versus, okay, I'm going to work out. I'm going to take time for me, mentally, spiritually, physically. I'm going to work out, this regimen each week. And it's time for you that you're selfish, but are you being selfish or selfless? Because ultimately you'll live longer, hopefully, right? God willing. And you'll be there in a better shape for your family.
Right, yeah.
Is that selfish or selfless?
Yeah.
Which is it?
I saw this thing, someone speaking, I don't know who it was, but he said, I'll take care of me for you, and you take care of you for me. Mm-hmm. And I thought that, I reflected, I was like, wow, that makes so much sense,
For sure.
And then getting back onto kids, I saw this was years and years and years ago, but it always stuck with me. This guy said, I'm probably gonna butcher it, but it was something along the lines of, everyone says they'll die for their kids, well, why not start living for them?
Yeah.
And I was just like, ding. I was like, that's it. When people are like, bro, well, I don't have time to eat right and do this because I got kids, and I'm just like,
for sure.
I'm like, I get it, man. I don't have kids, but I know it's hard.
Yeah.
When my dad was my age, our age, he already had 3 kids.
Yeah.
But it's like, but he still never let himself go. He always, you know what I mean? And it was just one of those things that made me wonder. And it's just about the perspective. They just flip the question.
It is.
Instead of, that's great, you would die for him, but why not live for him too while you're here?
Yeah.
Excellent question.
That's a great one.
So kind of going back, when you were 18, you started your first business, right? And you were on your own for this?
No, it's with family. My brother, my father, and I.
Okay.
Yep.
What do you think with if someone were to be on their own and they don't really have someone to guide them or someone to look up to, and they have to teach themselves that resiliency to get their their business off or to get their whatever their dream is? What do you think would be the best way, you learning for yourself or having that person to look up to and guide you?
It all depends on how fast you want to go. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you need a team. Right?
Right.
And that's not something I learned right away. I started out with a family business, yes, but I felt like an island. Most of my early career, I felt like if I would share any of my business ideas with you as a competitor or even someone in a completely different business, that in some way you'd either judge it or steal it from me. So I had to keep it to myself. If I read it, it was mine, I would never share it. And when I realized it took me a long time, much longer than it should have, when I realized that if I shared it, then someone would share something with me. And then that kept going back and forth, and eventually you had this whole concept, as Tony talks about, compressing decades into days. So what you've done in your lifetime, I haven't. You could teach me in a weekend some of the main things you've learned. That puts me way ahead. So in my mind, then once I realized and started, breaking this down, I say, you know what? Why wouldn't we have tribes? Why wouldn't we connect? Why wouldn't we share as much as we possibly could? That's not how I started at 18. At 18, I thought I learned it and it lived in me. And if I shared it, that it would somehow be, mutated or taken from me. And when I realized that was the absolute wrong way, and I see a lot of business owners now, the different guys that I coach and talk to, like a lot of them, we talk about it just at the event. We talk about, people being islands, especially men. The stoic, pioneering mindset of like, I've got to figure it out myself. If I talk to you about the fact that I feel weak in a certain area, that you're going to judge me as a weak man. And I know that's bullshit. I mean, I remember sitting in an auditorium with 13,000 people around me, and Tony in the front of the room says, how many people in here have a fear of failure? First time I was ever in an event with him. And I'm like, oh man, I got that one. And then he's like, how many people in here feel like they're not enough? How many people in here, men and women, feel like they are constantly worried about what other people think about them? And I'm like, damn, he hit the trio. I'm like, but that's all mine. I own those things. He goes, raise your hand. He looked around, 95% of men and women's hands were up. And I'm like, you mean I don't just own that shit? I could not believe it. That was the voices, the constant chatter in my head. You're not enough. You don't have what it takes to do this. And when I realized that's part of the human experience, not something that was broken in me, the freedom that came from that over time was incredible. But as men, we're told to just bottle it up, just keep it in, don't cry. I remember going to funerals and watching the men around me, and that was, without being said, it was, you don't cry. Real men don't cry. And I'm like, but I'm struggling here, dude. I want to cry. Like, it just feels right to do this right now. But I'm like, no, stiff upper lip, keep it going. And then I felt like less of a man because I couldn't keep it that way. Because I feel my environment. I can feel people's emotions. And I thought that was a weakness, so I'd never talk about it. And once I realized that this is just part of the human experience, and that crying, for instance, is something that is absolutely necessary. You can't bottle that stuff, especially as a man. So to be able to build a tribe or a close group of brothers and sisters that you can be absolutely blunt honest with, cry with them, laugh with them, be just insanely honest and vulnerable. That's when the freedom comes. Because everyone's struggling with the same shit, guys. They're all in different ways, but the same few questions that are asked of humans, like the same few things. Am I enough? What do they think about me? Will I ever make it? To your point, like, what does this all mean? We all struggle with very similar questions that we're managing, but we all think we aren't. We think it's our stuff, that we own it, we're broken, somehow this is an unsolvable problem. This is where the suffering comes from. But when you realize, in that auditorium, when I realized, looking around at 13,000 people and 95% of their hands up and the other ones are lying, I'm like, holy moly, that's a complete shift for me. That one move was a huge shift. I said, wait a minute, so if we all suffer from the same thing, why don't we all talk about it? Because my experience might help you and your experience might help me and help him, so why wouldn't we share that? And that's when everything started changing. In my world, it started to change. I'm like, now we just need to figure out ways to share as much as we can about our experiences. And others will feel the freedom in that to finally start talking. That's why with MMA, when we do that and we talk about things and we get into sharing stories, because people learn through stories.
Yeah, when he says MMA, it's not fighting.
No.
Mission mindset event. Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's hit on that, because I want these two guys to come to the next one, and we're going to do one that's local in the Poconos. That's going to be the next one, probably summertime. Yep. Let's talk about, what do we go through in that, and what's the big value there?
Yeah. So again, having an environment where you can just speak your mind, speak your heart, and not feel like you're being judged, not feeling like you're less than or better than, because in my opinion, all as humans, we're all equals, right? We're all been made in God's image, so we're all equals. And that took me a while to figure out too, because my judge always said that I was better than people when it wasn't obviously true. But that's what I wanted. I always wanted to think I had one up on everyone, right? It was just constant chatter in my head. And once I realized that was not the case, and I'm like, wow, that changes everything, doesn't it? If we're all equals, why aren't we helping each other? I'm not trying to hold and be better than. So during the event, it's about creating an environment that's a safe space for everyone just to be able to have a conversation, a raw conversation. And we get into things like talking about, what do you want your life to mean? We'll actually get into a space where we'll start talking about writing your own eulogy. What is life, what do you want it to mean at the end? Your family, your parents, your wife, your kids, whatever, friends, are standing in the front of the room. Your box is there in front of them. What are they saying about you? And it's not about what do they think of me. It's what did my life mean?
What did you stand for?
Yeah. What did you stand for? What were your morals? What kind of impact did you make in this world? Right?
Because that lives on forever.
It does. It's a legacy.
Wow.
It lives on in your children and your friends and whatever you do in life, right? So why not start with the end in mind? And then we start digging into, we obviously have a physical challenge involved. There's always a physical challenge. So you confront your saboteurs and sages. That's a whole other podcast, getting into the devil and the angel. We all have each one, right?
I struggle with that.
Yeah.
For sure.
We all do. We
For
all
sure.
do.
Daily, dude.
Yeah.
We all do.
100%.
So when's this event?
We're working on the date at this point, but
Okay.
it'll be here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
We're not going to go real distance this time.
Yeah,
I'll
if
be
you're
there.
listening, just reach out to me. I am Zach Day on Instagram if you want to know more about the event, or you can reach out to Joshua. I am Joshua Gillow.
Yep.
Just, say I'm interested in Mission Mindset Adventure, and we'll give you some more details. We'll fill you in. It's kind of invite only. It's not going to be like out there. We're not going to have a landing page, so to speak.
Yep.
But yeah, it's definitely a super impactful event, and I guarantee it'll change your life perspective and your life.
Yeah, it's not for everyone.
Nah.
You've got to be able to come in and want to grow.
Yeah.
Want more from life. Because if you're just, trudging along and you're perfectly happy in a 9-to-5 vanilla world, this is going to be way too much. Because there's a lot of musicality, we're moving around a lot, there's the physical challenge side of things, and then there's deep dive right into yourself and facing fears and thoughts and things and that you've never uttered to other people and said out loud. Because once you say it and you name it, then you can tame it.
Yeah.
But if it lives in there unbridled and uncontrolled, that's especially the devil on your shoulder. Think about it. Would you guys be friends with the voice in your head?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not. I talk shit. I talk back to that motherfucker.
Well, it depends on who it is. Like I have two. I always say like the demons, little inner demons that I have. Oh, I fight those motherfuckers every day, all the time.
Yeah.
But like me, myself, I mean, I'm very complacent with myself. But yeah, those demons, like that little thing that's saying, don't go for a run, be comfortable.
Yeah.
Or you can have McDonald's today. Like
Just one burger.
you treat yourself. Yeah, it's
work
okay. It's
hard.
okay. Exactly. Yeah. And it's like I didn't get this way by doing that other stuff. Like I have to stay consistent, work hard, and fight those demons every single day.
There's also the ego, trying to be better than everybody else.
Right.
All of it. There's more than one. There's a lot. There's a lot of them.
Yeah. So that's what we play with. That's the realm that we play in order to dig in and figure out which. Because with the sage and saboteur concept, the devil and the angel, there's, in the devil's side for sure, there's multiple, as Zach was saying, but one of them is the ringleader. I'm not going to get into great detail here. We go into great detail in those 3 days, but one of them is the ringleader, the one that kind of runs the roost. The other ones are kind of subordinate to it. So it's figuring out which one is your ringleader and then figuring out how to put that fucker in a cage.
Yeah. It's similar to the inner bitch, because a lot of people don't know what that is. It's very similar to that.
Yeah.
And like the devil and the angel, it's just a metaphor. So if you're not like religious, it's not like we go into that.
Yeah.
But no, like with that event, most of the people there were at least 30 years old. Like I'm normally the youngest one at these events.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have a responsibility to get you guys here and more people in their 20s. That's that's kind of like the purpose of the podcast. It's dedicated to people in their 20s, and that's what I want to help with, impact those people.
Yep.
So it means a lot to me to get younger people here and make an impact when you're a younger age and realize these things at a younger age. So.
I can't even imagine. I mean, I'm thinking it was probably late 30s, early 40s before my personal journey really took off.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, imagine if I'm 24 years old and understand this. And you guys, how old are you guys?
23.
I'm 24.
Yeah. If I knew what I know now at your age, how much more impact it could have on the world. Yeah. So when Zach's like, I want to bring this to 20-somethings, I'm like, let's do it. Because the earlier you learn this, the less suffering you have in life. It's that simple. The better life you can live, how you can impact more, you can have hopefully a longer time horizon. And just you don't have to go through that 20, 30 phase of, you're like, I don't know what I want to do. I'm going to get heavy into drugs and alcohol because I don't know where my freaking life is going, and like all this kind of stuff. It's just like, no, what if life was the drug? What if every day you could just be high on life? You know, what if that could be the goal? It takes work to get there though, because everything else is easier.
I mean, that's why people use drugs and alcohol, to escape that.
What if you didn't want to escape your reality? What if you loved your reality and those vices would take you backwards? Imagine that. Instead of it taking you forward and giving you rest, what if it gives you pain? That's a journey that I fought most of my life, and I'm finally on the other side of that. So it's like, holy moly, like it's crazy.
Yeah.
It really is crazy. But again, these are the kinds of things that we talk about and get deep into, and yeah, you got to get uncomfortable in order to start seeing the truth. Because when you get uncomfortable, you finally start to be introduced to yourself. You guys know that. You guys do crazy stuff, which I love. So you finally get introduced to yourself. Because I always say the best fruit is at the end of the branches, not up against the trunk where it's safe. It's when you go out to the edge and you're running crazy distances or lifting crazy stuff, and you're just like, this is insane, but I know I got it. I can definitely do this. And you just got to dig down and say, why am I doing it? Having that clear motivator.
The purpose.
Yep. What is the motivation?
Zach says that all the time. You know, like going on long runs, marathon, whatever. Like whatever we're training for, like why? The only way that's going to get you through this is knowing why you're doing it. Yeah. Like what is your purpose? Why you're doing this? So with you doing your marathon in 5 weeks, I mean, you said something about your dad, right?
Yeah, I said I ran it for everyone that I lost in my life.
Right.
Nice.
Which is huge. I mean, that you're gonna get through that race no matter what.
Exactly.
You know.
You'll pull from that.
Same thing with your grandmother and the 50 miler. Like, you even said it before. Like, I'm gonna crawl over that finish line.
Yeah.
If I have to.
It wasn't even like it wasn't an option.
I will
said
finish
it
this
a million
race.
times. I was like, I don't care how I get there. All I know is I'm getting there.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But like it's still, it wasn't just like a one-time thing. You know what I mean? Like that's my or our mindset going into whether it's the 50K or if I'm in the gym, 100%. Like whatever. It's something like continuously I'm like, I don't care how I get there. I just know I'm getting there. You know what I mean? Like the start point and the finish line, those are the only things that are like definite. You're gonna start and I'm gonna finish. Everything else in between, I don't even care about the details. I just know I'm going here. I start here and I'm going here. Everything else, I'll get there. I'll figure it out, you know?
But yeah, you're right. That why definitely pulls you. You need that why. Attach a why to everything, every goal that you have in life.
Yeah.
And you can't lie to yourself, because when you're pushing through the pain and that why is not strong enough, or some bullshit why that you just cocked up to make it work, you just stop and you look at that why and you're like, it's just not strong enough. But if I look in my kids' eyes as their father, as their role model, and I think, you want to quit in front of them? Or I think, if you're the ultimate warrior for God, would he quit right now?
Amen.
Right?
Yeah.
And you stop and say, what would he do? He'd do another fucking rep is what he'd do.
Yeah.
He'd push another fucking mile. He'd stop bitching and keep pushing. He's not dead yet. Keep him moving.
That's
not dead yet.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to the point where, like, I mean, you guys I do it a bunch. They laugh at me, but like I like start talking shit and stuff like out loud. Like,
bro, I do it too
like,
now.
It
just comes out. I don't know what it is.
But it's like I'm talking.
You don't know me, son.
I'm talking. I'm talking to him. Like, who's up here? He's like, bro, like just like. Bro, I must have did it 87 times during that, especially during the last 4 miles of the 50.
Yeah.
When I'm like, just stop running for a sec, man.
Yeah.
Like, your legs hurt. And literally, I'm like out loud, I'm running. I'm like, fuck you. I'm like, shut up. You know what I mean? And like, there's people driving by in cars. You probably just see my mouth moving, and then there's no one next to me. But I don't care. I don't give a fuck about what they think. But I'm like, you motherfucker. I'm like, if you don't move your ass right now, you know what I mean? But that's what. I mean, I love it, dude. You know, I don't want to be like everybody else.
Yeah,
that's right.
People look at me like I'm nuts, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, to you maybe, but this is my normal, so.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Your standard is different.
Yeah, it is.
Cool. What do you think is like the #1 skill like any human should have?
Communication.
Communication. Can you go more into that?
Do I have to? No.
Do I have to communicate to you about this?
Why communication? What does that get you?
I've mostly been an introvert most of my life. And I never thought communication was that important. It was, you know, I talk, grab, eat enough, getting food, whatever, place to sleep, all that stuff, the basics. But being able to want to speak to people. You know, podcasting is not something that comes easy to me. It was a huge fear of mine. Public speaking was one of my biggest fears.
Oh, yeah.
And the first few times were absolutely atrociously horrible. Right? But what I realized is I'm not an introvert. That was my rule I gave, well, not a rule, but that's the identity I gave myself so my saboteurs could run the roost and be like, yeah, you're not good enough. Like, yeah, you're an introvert. You don't need to speak. But when I learned that was bullshit, when I learned that was just some crazy complex in my own brain, and I realized that I'm not going to be able to have the connections that I want, the relationships that I want in life, the feeling that I want of being fulfilled every day until I learn how to communicate. Because no matter how much money I would make, no matter how many projects I would get, no matter how many things I would do or achieve, there's always a hole. There's always this feeling of, it's okay, now what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? And I had to figure out what that was. And what it was for me was going from always focusing on what's next to being fulfilled in what I have. I know you probably heard that 100 times, but actually being able to do that. And what I found throughout that journey is I needed to learn how to communicate myself like I am here, being vulnerable, being honest. You know, the difference between vulnerability and honest is vulnerability is you share something that could be weaponized. Right? You tell me something like, hey, I did this yesterday, and I tell somebody and they can hurt you with it. So that's vulnerability. Honesty, this is my wife and I, we sat and just had this conversation in Florida, and we're like, because I kept using the word vulnerable, she's like, think about that word. She's German, so she thinks about these words differently. She had to learn them as a second language. So she looks at this and she goes, vulnerability is not what you mean. I'm like, what are you talking about? We've had this conversation. You drive me crazy with this question. He goes, stop. Can you actually weaponize? Because if you're vulnerable, it means that you can be hurt. But if you're honest, can you be hurt with honesty and truth?
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, I didn't either. She blew my mind.
Wow.
And I was like, that's why I love her, because she challenges me all the time. She's like, you use this word, it's like a catchword. You know, everybody's saying being vulnerable, as a man, be vulnerable. It's like, but what are they weaponizing against you? If you're being honest, there's no way to weaponize it. You know what I mean? They're just like we're talking today. This is honest conversation. It's going to be out for millions of people to listen to. That's honesty. That's not vulnerability. They couldn't use anything that's been said so far, at least that I've said, against me. So there's no vulnerability. There's no weakness.
I was going to say, I feel like it's inverse in that, like, because if you're vulnerable, you're giving someone that weapon to hurt you, but it can only hurt you if you allow it to hurt you. Like, it's really just depending on how you can take being vulnerable. Or
how much your ego's in charge.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Think about that. So this kind of communication is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Being able to be introspective and being completely honest or vulnerable depending on the situation, right? But being able to do that.
Well, you're kind of almost saying you can almost take vulnerability out of the question because you can't hurt me.
Yeah, you can't. No matter what I say is not going to be able to be weaponized, and if you try to weaponize it, it's just going to bounce off me. Go ahead, try it. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I care. I don't care what you think. You know, I only care about what one person thinks or what one entity thinks. You know what I mean? I don't care about the rest of it all.
Yeah.
So everything else is just an opinion. That's your judge that's speaking to me, nobody else. Anyway, point is that having the ability to not just have the courageousness, the courage to speak truth, but also to have the ability to communicate. Because when you do that, you're released from prison, from this mental construct we have. Like I mentioned before, thinking that I owned all of those problems, where I thought that everyone, you know, I care so much about what everyone thinks. I'm a people pleaser, and that's just who I am, and I can't change that. And I'm worried about failing constantly, and I'm always afraid that I'm not enough. And I thought I owned that stuff. And when I realized through communication that everyone has that same issue, those same thoughts, wow, but it took communication to get there. It took an honesty and a courageousness to open up to that and to speak a truth. So I would say it's communication.
I'm sure.
I'm gonna be a little vulnerable right now. I don't care what anyone thinks about me, except for the people closest to me.
Right.
I would say, like, you guys. Like, I just don't want to disappoint you guys, and I don't want to disappoint my family. And I don't know if that's a healthy way of thinking about it, but I guess that's just how I think. Like, I care about if it's not what I do, like if I can run a marathon or if I can do this, but of just dropping the ball with, like, taking care of myself or failing you guys. You know what I mean? Like, I'm definitely afraid of failing you guys.
Right.
And that's what I guess what pushes me to not do that.
But you know, there's one level deeper to that, and really the bigger root behind that. If we accept the fact that we're going to fail, what we have to also accept the fact is that we may lose somebody's love. Because one of the biggest fears as humans we have is if we're not enough, that we won't be loved. Right? So if that's the case, if that is true, then that explains a lot of why we keep pushing, because ultimately as humans we want love. We need to be in a tribe to survive. So if we're constantly thinking that, and we won't admit that, but maybe it's even further down than that, but think about that and see if that might be part of that movement. And not even love, like, but just being loved, being part of that. If you disappoint them, that they wouldn't need you anymore.
Yeah, no, I don't think like that, because I trust them so much. Like, I just have a certain, like, I want to hold myself to a certain standard for them. And even if I do fail once, it's not going to define, between us. But I just have that inner fear of, not just not being enough, but just.
I'm sure you do have that though, not being enough. That was one of my biggest ones.
Yeah.
Like saboteur wise.
Yeah, but it's not in like a negative way, I guess. At least for me, I don't like. It's more of that's what gives me the drive and the push to be better.
For sure.
Yeah. And I trust you guys completely to where, like, I know our love and our tribe isn't gonna be really broken apart.
Definitely.
Yeah, dude. I'll say, I think you need to give yourself some grace. Like, put yourself in our shoes for a second, right? We're looking at you. Like, look at yourself from our perspective. And I'm sure Zach can probably say the same thing. The only way you would ever fail or disappoint us is if you failed yourself. You know what I mean? If you're saying you want to do all this great stuff for you and you want to be this type of person, but then you just are a complete hypocrite about it, then we'd probably be like, all right, well, this guy's full of shit. You know what I mean? But regardless of, if we sign up for a fucking 50K and you don't finish it, it's not going to disappoint us, dude. You know what I mean?
I'm not saying with that. Yeah, no. Because for me, I am not going to fail that fucking 50K.
But even use it
as
a metaphor. It doesn't have to be the thing. Use it as a metaphor. Like,
right.
It's like, we know who you are. And dude, if you fail just being you, giving 100%, we'd be like, well, fuck, dude, he tried, but you know what? We're going to go again. Exactly. But just give yourself some grace, man. Like, I mean, believe me, I get it. I feel the same things, but it's like, I feel like and we're so close with each other, I feel like the only way we would truly fail or disappoint one another is if we just failed ourselves. Maybe we didn't give our best. Maybe we just...
I wouldn't even say failing, I would say quitting.
Yeah,
difference.
I think that's a good way to that's probably a better way to put it.
Yep.
Because quitting was, we went over that with, like I was just like, I was so, like, I'm afraid of quitting ever. Like, I just don't want to quit.
Yeah, dude. You don't want to have no what ifs. Right? And I think a lot of people have that same question, like the same feeling. Because, I mean, that's probably a scary feeling, bro. Imagine your time's there and you're like, I could have been. Did you ever hear the thing Goggins said?
Yeah.
About getting to heaven?
I actually saw a deeper one on like Instagram the other day. He did another one, but he went like way deeper. I can't quote it, but
yeah. But he was talking about how he stayed that fat 300-pound guy.
Well, even like you get to heaven and God tells you everything that you could have been, and you're like, wait, that's not me.
That's what it was.
This is what I built you for, though, and you didn't do any of it.
Exactly, and that's what he said. He was like, his life ended. He was still just that eco lab diet, slamming the donuts and the shakes, like remember from the book.
Yeah.
And God's there. He's like, all right, David Goggins, ultramarathoner, Navy SEAL, Air Force, fucking whatever he was, I don't remember.
Author.
But the flight control author, public speaker, running Moab like 240, motherfucker ran across Florida, like all these different things, and that's what it was. He's like, well, that's not me. He's like, yeah, but it's what you were supposed to be.
Right.
And it's just, and bro, if you can truthfully go through your life saying, I did everything I could, then I feel like that's really, it's not even about like failure or success. Did you do everything you could, Did you take the risk? Did you be honest and, tell that person to fuck off when you wanted to? Anything,
For sure.
And that's like the dream almost, so to speak.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, failure is an event, and quitting is a choice.
Right.
I think that's what I meant is not failing, quitting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're going to fail a ton. And if you're not failing, you're not pushing hard enough.
You're not going to win if you don't fail.
Yep.
And your destination might be, locked in a certain position in your head, and you're thinking it's going to be this way to get there. And it's not to be the case. It's going to be all over the place to get there. But just not taking your eye off of where you're heading.
Yeah.
And making sure that it's not ego-driven, because that's only going to get you so far. You're not going to take anybody with you. It's the goal of life is how many people can I take with me on this journey and lift up and raise up as we're moving through.
Yeah.
How can I share everything I possibly know and have been given through, my gifts through God, and how can I share as much of that throughout my life? How can I share? Because it's in the share that the magnification, the amplification happens. Oh. That's when things become just crazy. And that's like when you talk about abundance and all that, and if you think about, I just want abundance for me. Right? That's a very small world to live in, and maybe you'll get all the money you ever wanted and all that, but the beauty comes in the sharing of it all. I mean, like, think about it. When you get great news, what's the first thing you do? You call somebody.
Yeah.
Right? You call somebody, dude, this just happened to me. This is freaking amazing. You're like, that's awesome. You want to share it because it magnifies it.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens with things that you've all gone through in life. If you share with them as many people as you possibly can, just for the sake of sharing, the sake of giving, you're going to be blown away in a very short amount of time with how that comes back 100-fold. And that's where the faith side comes in, because in the beginning it's grueling. I know you guys are starting coaching and all that stuff, and in the beginning it's like you feel like you're working nonstop with no reward. And it's God testing you. Are you in it for the ego? Or are you in it because you want to help? Because if you want to help and it's truly in your heart for that, you will go over any mountain possible because that's what you want. But if you're not getting the instant gratification of whatever you deem success, whatever rule you put around success of that endeavor, then you're like, oh man, the money's not flowing like I expected it to. I expected within 6 months I'd have 700 people in my group. I thought for sure, doing the math, and I'd be making serious bank. I could do this in no time. If that's the rule to success, that's making sure that you'll never get there, because all of the winning of that rule is based in someone else. It's extrinsic. Imagine putting rules around that it's intrinsic, that no matter, even if you don't get up that day out of bed, you still win. You know what I mean? So just like we talked about, God, thank you for one more day. I'm going to make you proud today. I win the second my eyes pop open. Think about it. It can be that simple. And then you're like, all right, we love check boxes and things as humans, like to make sure we're moving forward. We get a dopamine hit every time we do it. Mm-hmm. Checkbox done, good. Day's awesome already. How much more awesomer can it be today?
Right. Yeah.
Things just bounce off. It's incredible how that works. But I love that you guys are so far in this journey in your mid-20s. It's really, really cool.
Well, I feel like I'm just beginning. I wouldn't say it's so far. I feel like I'm just beginning.
That's awesome. Though. The fact is that you want it.
Oh yeah.
You're willing to talk about it and be open and.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be anywhere, like, with doing this type of thing without them.
Yep.
Whatsoever.
Good. Takes a try, brother.
Yeah.
Takes a try.
Yeah, it's true, man. Me and Zach had talks all the time about how far Jake came over these last couple of years.
Yeah.
It's crazy to see, man. It was like, Jake's here, but like he's gone at the same time.
Yeah.
Like he's physically here, but whoever was in him before,
for sure,
that motherfucker stayed in Monmouth, man. He stayed out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Drew definitely saw the change first. Like when I was sitting right there, I came back from college, my first semester.
Man, yeah.
I was like 160 pounds.
It's tough.
But for me, like my frame, I wasn't healthy at all.
No.
I didn't eat for like 3 days. Didn't work out. I stayed in my dorm room for like 3 or 4 days at a time.
Like you look sick, man.
I
Like,
know.
You look sick.
Yeah, dude. And we were laughing about it, but then
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a laughing matter because
That's just how we cope. That's our
you know what I
copium.
mean? Like
We're like, haha, all right, dude, but fuck. Like,
you look
Seriously, dude. You got a cheeseburger.
Exactly, yeah. And yeah, it would be like binge eating. Like I would not eat for 3 or 4 days, and then I would just fucking pig out.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was the weirdest thing. I had body dysmorphia. It was weird. Definitely depressed, but I was in denial with being depressed because I was
I
like,
can relate to that.
yeah. And I was like, I'm not depressed. Like, I'm good. I'm still living. But deep down, I was like, I had no purpose. I had no direction. I had, you know, and you know, these guys just doing uncomfortable things, doing things that you don't want to do is kind of what got me to, you know, finding who I am. Like you said, being uncomfortable is where you can finally truly understand yourself and get to see your true self.
Yeah. And now there's the ripple effect going on with your brother. Ran a half marathon. In
And
30
my
days.
dad.
And
Dad's
your
doing a
dad.
marathon too.
Exactly.
I love it. And like he even said, he's like, I've always wanted to do a marathon. He's like, it's always been on my bucket list.
Yeah.
But like, if I didn't do this, then would he really like checked it off? Like, would he really have the? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
Yeah.
I'm just glad that he's doing it.
dude, your dad not late. He was pouring it out to us on New Year's, man.
I know.
I mean, you know, might have been a
Alcohol,
little bit of liquid courage.
had a little,
but he said pretty much exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Because he's like, man, he's like, I've always wanted to do this,
Yeah.
but I never did it because X, Y, Z. But now seeing you guys do this, he's like, I got to.
Yo.
And that's what gives me the inspiration to keep doing it. It's like,
That's why we're doing this.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's so often people will come to you on your journey and say, dude, how do you get other people to do stuff? Like, I'm trying to tell my brother, my mother, my friends, my whatever, like, they just won't listen. I keep trying to tell them that just do this or read this book or go get uncomfortable, take an ice bath. And they're like, no way, man. That's the problem, right? We want to tell people how to do it, and no one wants to listen. They feel judged. They feel like they're being told what to do. Nobody likes to be told or dictated to. So to your exact point, be the model. Just own it. Just do it. And others are going to come around like, what is this guy doing? Like, seriously, like, holy moly, like, I remember him before, and now I see him now? How'd you do it? Especially when it's family, right? It feels completely different. You're like,
Oh, for
whoa,
sure.
wait a minute, when did my dad start looking up to me?
Exactly. No, because like they gave me so much in my life. Like they did everything for me.
Yeah.
And now that I'm able to give to them too, I'm like,
Feels
oh,
amazing,
man,
doesn't it?
it feels awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah,
It's amazing.
So you're doing all these amazing things, and you're absolutely very skilled and talented, and you're inspirational. What do you think your biggest weakness is?
My biggest weakness. Right now, I'd say my biggest weakness is chasing shiny objects. I see the opportunity in everything. Everything. I see an opportunity in it. So then I have to now, and I am actively working on this, is yes management. Because there's just so many opportunities. When you have an abundance mindset, all you see is opportunity everywhere.
Yeah.
And you're like, I could do that, I could do this, I know exactly how to do this, I'll put a team together and build this and all this kind of stuff. And then you stop and you're like, but why? Does it further the mission? And that's been the bigger question now that I've been managing. Does it further the mission? The answer is no. The answer is no. You know what I mean? It's very simple. But then there's also looking at it saying, man, I can make a difference there. I could really help those people.
Would you say it's controlling your ambition?
For me, it
Or
was-
trying to like funnel your ambition towards
Yeah. For me, it was managing the achiever in me. Right? And as a child, at some point, I did something and my father patted me on the head, said, good job, son. I said, I need to do something else to achieve. Another happened again, boom. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I get love and attention when I do this. And an achiever was born. So that serves you well. You build businesses, you do all of these things, but it can also run your ass hard. Like there was not so long ago, Zach and I have had this conversation, not too long ago, and I'm like, all right, well, starting all these companies, doing all these things, and you stop and it was my coach. He's like, okay, you ever hear the story of Alexander the Great? I said, well, yeah, he conquered the known world. He goes, yeah, and what happened after he died, or after he conquered the known world? Well, after he's got everything he couldn't go any higher. What happens next?
Yeah.
He became depressed, got syphilis and died. He just went back to trying to be happy, indulging, and eventually killed him because he had no more shiny objects to chase. So that's really put me in a position now to start really asking the bigger questions in life and saying, okay, why are you doing this? You know you can do it. You know that whatever you put your mind to, you guys have talked about this. You said, I'm going to make it, and there's no fucking way I won't make it. It might take longer than I expect. It might be less time than I expect, but I will not stop until I get there, regardless of what it is. But why is that important? And now with my kids being 13 and almost 16, I feel that time slipping out of my hands to be that model in their life. And every time I'm away from them is time that I don't have to influence where they're going. So with kids, that changes the entire perspective. So now I'm like, okay, so if that's the case, my achiever, I know I can achieve. I'm pretty good at that part. Now, what does it mean to not achieve? Who is Joshua Gillow when he's not achieving? And I'm in that process of learning that right now. Of moving through that, like, all right, so who are you without all the achievement? What if you're not allowed to start another business or not allowed to do all these other things for the next year or whatever, or travel as much as you were? What if you make a rule to yourself, no one else is dictating this, make a rule to yourself that you aren't going to do those things anymore, and now you're going to start focusing on what you have and being appreciative of that instead of thinking the next thing is going to give you more and more fulfillment and satisfaction. So that's been a big shift for me. An identity shift, because I'm an achiever. That's what I do. But now I'm not.
It's very interesting. I never even thought about it with that, because I'm like, that's what we're doing right now. That's from the stage that we're at. So, like, it's just achieving, trying to chase that next goal. How, and you said that you're struggling with it. In what way? How are you struggling with this?
I was struggling with the identity side. You know, we assign our own identities, and then we'll fight to the death to keep that identity, right? And for me, and I didn't even know these words at the time, but I just always felt like I had to keep going. I had to keep proving to someone or something or myself that no matter what I say I can do it. There was just this deep carnal need for that, and through a bunch of events that I've been to, and digging deep into this, I started realizing that it was the achiever, and that's one of my saboteurs, believe it or not. It can be a sage, and it can be a saboteur at the same time, so it wears the same outfit, but it will stab you in the back and give you food at the same time. So it's a matter of managing that and be purposeful with that, and understanding that when your purpose is clear and your why is defined, then it's a matter of, okay, does this solve that problem? Does this support that mission, or does it not? And like I said, the achiever is a very powerful part of our identities, especially as men. You know what I mean? We want to achieve, we want to build, we want to grow. We want to prove to the world that we've got what it takes. But when you say prove to the world, is it proving to your ego? Is it proving to someone in your family? Is it proving to what? Is it for attention? What is it for? You know, and for me, that's where spirituality dovetails so beautifully into it, because it answered a lot of the questions that I thought I understood, but most of it was ego. I had to face that and be like, no, this is all really for me. And I went through a process. First time that I did UM was, you know, I went in there like, everything's cool, man, everything's great, and you know, I'm a great family guy, and I'm always there with my kids and all this, and you know, I've got these businesses and blah blah blah. And the next thing you know, it's all men, so they called me out of my shit. And what we do there is we actually assign a name to the saboteur that is your primary saboteur. And in mine, they named me Captain Bullshit. And I'm a guy that is very much a man of my word. I've always been that way. I say I'm going to be here, I will be there. And I say it, it's done. If I don't say it, it doesn't get done. Simple. Like if life was that way for everybody, the world would be a lot simpler. And that's my rule, is that's how that works. And what I found is through this process is that I was showing up physically with my family. Like I was always at the games. I was always like going to do these things. But I wasn't spiritually or there, present. I was on my phone. I was thinking of the next project. I was thinking next shiny object, right? And I was physically there, Captain Bullshit. I was bullshitting myself and everyone around me. None of them felt it. I've asked them afterward, and none of them felt. They're like, yeah, you're always here. But I'm like, but I'm not here. I couldn't remember anything you told me or what we did because I'm somewhere else. I'm here. I'm checking the box. But I'm not actually here to be present, because presence is the only thing that's real. Everything that happened yesterday and anything that happened tomorrow is a construct of your mind. This
Right
conversation now is the only. This is the only thing that's real right now. The only thing that's real.
Mm-hmm.
That's the crazy part, right? And once I realized that I was robbing from my family for my ego, that's when it all shifted for me. It broke me to my knees, brother. It broke me to my knees.
I was going to ask how you've been dealing with this transition. Like, what are some of the things you've been doing? But I think you just answered it right there. It's just being more present in the moment.
Present.
Being in the right now.
Yep. And looking at the my time. You mentioned earlier about not having enough time. Like, oh my God, I got so many things going on. You make priority of what you find priority. You make time for your priorities, whatever they are, whether they're good or bad. Whatever you think is important, you'll put time into it. And whatever you don't, you won't. It's that simple. So if your body's a priority to you, you'll put time into it. If it's not, you won't. Simple. So for me, it's now a transition from going of Josh the achiever, who is looking for more shiny objects. How can he prove to the world that he's worth it? All of those kinds of things that he can't be knocked down. To Joshua the family man, who now values presence with his family as number one. Like right after we're done here, I'm gonna go over and pick up my son. He's like not even a mile away over here at Faith Christian. And then I go back, I drop him off, and then Jacob and I are gonna head down and do our first time of open volleyball down in Forks Township. He wants to play volleyball. I'm like, that's it, phone's in the truck, off we go. Let's have some fun. Let's figure this out.
Wow.
But making purposeful time for that. And it's not easy because I'd rather be building stuff, growing things, making money, doing stuff. But I know that if I continue that, I will be an alone, very unhappy, fully regretful old man. And I will not allow that to be my story.
So you're not going to let this whole thing take over. You're still going to be the achiever, Josh the achiever. But you're also going to be Josh the family man.
Correct.
It's all about managing your time or managing what you do in your day-to-day.
It's being purposeful and not just letting it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Purposeful is the key word here.
Mm. I love that.
Yeah. Cool, so we got to wrap up, I know. I guess last question. And first of all, I am Joshua Gillow on Instagram, Joshua Gillow on Facebook. Anything else you want to shout out?
You have your Outer Spaces podcast. Yeah, just go to Outer Spaces podcast on any podcast platform. You'll find us there. Where we get to interview some of the coolest people and some of the neatest things that are happening. So
yeah. So you're talking to 20-year-olds. What piece of advice do you have for us? Anything?
Boy, it's a good one. I have a whole list, but if I could go back and give myself one piece of advice when I was 20-some years old, is to realize that your ego is in charge now. It's that part of life. And that the second you let go and you surrender to a higher power, whatever you want to call it, is when your life will start beginning to grow and be. That's all I got to say, because everything that I just said, everything that we're talking about is only words moving through us. That's it. None of it's logical. It's emotional. That's why first couple of questions are typically logical, and after that you start getting into the hard side of things where it's a free flow. And you feel each other as opposed to just trying to listen. So that's what I would say.
Well, if you're listening, thanks. You made it this far. Catch you on the next one.